Welcome back to another live episode of the Relevant Recruiter Show. Today, I've got a good friend of mine, Mark Wilson, joining me today. Mark is a risk and compliance recruiter based in the UK. And Mark is going to tell his story of his journey, being an entrepreneur, owning his recruiting business. And he's also going to share some insights of how he's been able to leverage the Relevant Recruiter method to help grow his business. Mark, thank you for taking the time, and good evening to you.
Thank you. Good morning to you, Donnie. Good to see you again.
Yep. Before we get started into all the nuts and bolts, Mark, give us a little, high overview. I know I just mentioned that you're in the UK, but where are you at in the world? What's going on with the family life, and what are some exciting things going on in that angle?
That's a very good question. So I'm actually based, for those that will know, I'm based on the Herefordshire, Worcestershire borders, which is very rural. But business-wise, business is focused on London, Birmingham and Manchester primarily. So my wife and I live out here in the countryside with our 3 kids and 2 chihuahuas. And I play as much golf and fish as often as family and work allow, really. So it's important, as you know.
Absolutely.
You're a very passionate family man, and very busy guy. And it's hugely important to get that balance right. Yep,
100%, 100%. So, I don't know enough about the UK geography to know where you're living versus where London's at, but I know you've mentioned a couple of times your passion for golf and also getting out to do some fishing and stuff like that. So I think that's awesome and important. Tell us, Mark, how did you get started in the recruiting industry?
Okay, so I knew nothing about it. Like a lot of people, I guess, my age, as in terms of being in recruitment as long as I have, it was not really seen as a career back then or a vocation. People fell into it. And I think that's precisely what I did. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'd been teaching actually for quite a long while, and wanted to do something different, didn't know what, and went to see a career coach and asked their advice. And she mentioned recruitment. I didn't even know it existed as a job. So I went away and researched it. And long story short, joined one of the big high street recruiters here in the UK who had a really strong training program. And that's why I joined them, mate. And spent 2 really, really good years there, and learned a lot during that time. So, that's how I got into it. And that was, I would say, 98, 99.
Got it. So 20 plus years now.
So, yes, thanks for the remark. Yeah, that long. Yeah.
Sorry to bring that up.
There's a lot more grey hairs than there would have been otherwise. Yeah. So 20 odd years.
Well, you mentioned that their training platform is what kind of attracted you to them. I mean, what were they training you up on back in 99?
Well, if I give you an idea, but we didn't have email.
Right.
So we used to send CVs via fax. So that gives, for anybody who remembers, right. I tell my kids that, and they're like, "What's fax?" So, but that's so. What they did was a proper. It was part residential training course, and obviously on the job as well. And they went through every bit of it. So how to liaise with candidates, how to identify them, how to register them, how to market them. The same with clients. They went through every step of how to make a client call, a business development call, how to conduct a client visit, which for me, coming from teaching, having never been in recruitment or anything like that, I felt I needed to really go in entry. So I took a pay cut. I've become disillusioned with teaching. I was doing far more admin than teaching because I was a head of department. Mm-hmm. So I actually took a pay cut and went back to grassroots and learned everything. I've got a bit of a sponge-like brain, and I just like to learn. And that's what I did, and that's why I chose them. There were plenty of others offered more money, actually, funnily enough. But this client, this company, really sold themselves on their training. So
Right.
that's why I went.
Right. Now, did you go from that company to starting your own business? Is that how the journey went, or did you pop around to some other companies from there?
No, so I did 2 years high street recruitment to actually doing call center recruitment. So it was fairly volume. Then I moved to what was, I guess in those days you called a professional recruitment company, and started to focus on accountancy. Initially part qualified accountants, then moving to qualified and more senior appointments. With it was all the same. It was a global firm, and spent 8 or 9 years with them, and then moved from a developmental point of view. I hadn't done much in the search sphere, so I moved to an executive search firm. And at that point, there was no intention at that point of going on my own, setting up my own business. But that firm basically gave me a desk and a PA and left me to it. And I started to think about, well, okay, so I'm bringing in a lot of revenue and I'm seeing about a third of that.
Right.
What's my employer doing for the other 2/3 sort of thing?
Right.
And I've got a good mate who works in private equity, and he kept saying, go on your own, you're just wasted there, do your own thing. But I never wanted to borrow. I never wanted to be in a position whereby I wasn't my own boss. And I think if you're backed by private equity, however much you like to think you're your own boss, you're not.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I held off, and then I'm a big believer in things happening for a reason and seeing the positive in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought a house, at least I thought I had. I sold my house. We were close to exchanging on the house I was buying. And my solicitor advised me for various reasons to pull out. There were issues with the planning permission, that it was a newly converted barn. And there were issues with the planning. And so I pulled out and decided that I would go through with the sale of my own property. I didn't think it was fair on the people. I knew the people who were buying my property loved it. And I didn't think it was fair for me to withdraw from their sale, from their purchase rather. And so I moved into a rented house because I didn't have anything else to do. But all of a sudden, I'd got money because I had my equity. It was going to be a deposit. I was in a good job in a search firm on a 6-figure basic. To walk away from that was frightening.
Yeah.
But I knew I could afford to do it, and I knew I could afford to set up my own business without any external investment. So I did.
Love it.
Yeah.
And that was scary entrepreneurial leap, huh?
Yeah. So that was 2012. So this is our 10th year of business. We're 10 in January.
Nice. No, that's cool. I actually never heard that story from you, that you basically, that the selling of the house funded the business, gave you the kind of the extra push to be able to put yourself out there and do it. Here you are 10 years later, survived, profitable, doing well.
Yeah. That's it. There's been tears, tantrums, and triumphs along the way. Don't worry about it. But,
of course.
But yeah, it still remains the best thing I ever did. Yeah.
When you stepped out on your own, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced, running your own business versus working for a firm?
Okay. Well, one of the obvious ones is, from a business perspective, it is the restrictive covenants that you do have. Whenever you move job in recruitment, let alone set yourself up in business. To be fair, I was quite fortunate with my previous employer, who didn't ring fence everything. Mm-hmm. Realized that he was an entrepreneur as well. He ran his own business, and we came to a pretty amicable agreement about what was fair game and what wasn't. I suppose the hardest, there's a couple of hard things. One is employing anybody, when you, I've been a manager in other businesses and happily spent my employer's money to hire somebody and pay them a salary.
Right.
When it comes to doing that yourself, that's quite tough.
Yeah.
It's quite tough. You perhaps overthink things. I think that applies a lot when you're setting up your own business. You sort of second guess yourself quite a bit. Things that you wouldn't have thought twice about when you're spending somebody else's money.
Right.
When it's your own money, you do think a lot more. And sometimes I look back and yeah, I perhaps didn't run with things that I should have done early doors, which proved to be hugely successful later. And I think sort of look back and think perhaps I should have done that originally. And if I did it my time again, I guess I didn't put in place anything in terms of a formal marketing approach or a sales approach. I was very lucky, having had by that point about 10, 12 years in recruitment, that I had some very strong relationships. As I say, I was allowed to maintain and keep a large proportion of those. So it was a fairly easy transition to begin with. And I started to take things for granted a bit. So when things became difficult, which they did, I didn't have the systems and processes in place to generate new business. I'd been living off existing clients and
Right.
then new business within those existing clients. And in the end, it transpired that from a risk management perspective, I had too many eggs in too few baskets, and it almost cost us the business, if I'm honest.
Right. Right.
So.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I know that's a common challenge that a lot of folks are working with, is you kind of get busy with, your reputation, so to speak, and then you're always busy and there's never time to put in the system. And then all of a sudden, when the need for the system is, it's almost too late in a lot of cases. So how did you, what do you think makes your business unique from the next recruiting firm?
There's so many recruitment firms out there.
I just love asking the question. So
yeah, it's just like, I don't think there's any way, in all honesty, to make yourself truly unique. I think there's ways in which you can significantly differentiate yourself. So I think the small business personal service is key, whether that's to candidates or clients. I think that is unusual in the market. Then I always say I set up the business on a number of pillars that I wanted. It was called the 4 C's, but one of those was communication. And if you ask 100 candidates in particular what their biggest bugbear is with recruiters, I would say the majority will say lack of communication. So I put in place a guarantee that we would, as a business, respond to every communication within 48 hours, whether it's a voicemail, whether it's an email, whatever, message via LinkedIn, whatever it is.
Right.
We will get back. Even if we can't help, it's a thanks, but we can't help, but perhaps point you in the direction of somebody you can.
Right.
So I think that, I know that really differentiates, because that's the feedback I get from candidates, sort of like almost a shock of, oh, you called me back. Sort of.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing is, I've never stopped being a teacher.
Right.
I loved teaching. I left because I became disillusioned with everything else that went on around teaching.
Right.
And so I like to think my aim is that whenever I speak to anybody, a candidate or a client, but in particular candidates, I can add value.
Right.
I often say to them when I start up, I wish I could place every candidate that I speak to, because I'd be very rich and I'd be retired by now and I'd be living permanently on the golf course. But if I can add value to that individual's job search in any way, shape, or form, and they go on subsequently to get a job, then I think I've done my job.
Right.
I think the term that I see myself as a recruitment consultant, although I tend to call myself a recruiter, but I say the consultant element, I think, is key. I'm very proud of what I do. I genuinely believe that as a consultant, if it's done well, we add as much value as management consultants, etc., to businesses, and we can add a hell of a lot of value as a consultant to the candidate community. And I really enjoy that element of my role. And I would say at the moment, comfortably 15 to 20 hours a week, I spend talking to and registering candidates and giving them advice. Obviously, I'm trying to find out what they want to do, and hopefully that'll lead to me being able to present them with opportunities. But I'm also giving them CV advice, market advice, how to get the most out of LinkedIn, how to approach the market as a whole. A lot of, especially people who've been with employers for long periods of time, don't know how to approach the market. Which of my competitors are worth speaking to in their local geographies to get them back into the market, back into a new role quickly if they're out of work in particular. So I think ultimately, from a candidate perspective, that's what I think sets me apart. From a client perspective, the net result of that is I know a lot of candidates. I know my market inside out. And so when I speak to clients, I believe I can give them as well a really strong insight into the market, specifically the risk and compliance market, within often predominantly small businesses, fintechs, insurtechs, those sort of organizations. And I can identify people for them that maybe others can't, because I am speaking to so many candidates. To me, it's a key part of my job.
Yeah, no, I love that, the consultative, approach that you take, and definitely provides a differentiator for, like you said, for both, being able to talk to the candidates, give them the feedback. I know that's not something that they're normally used to. I'm not saying that anybody else that's listening to this doesn't do the same thing, but I think that's such a leg up to genuinely care, right, about the people you're speaking with and advancing their career. And then I think your clients see that stuff too. And then, like you said, you have a good stranglehold on the market. You know exactly, what you're trying to do, who's available, and it's refreshing to hear. What do you wish you may have known before you decided to go out and start this recruiting business?
I don't know about back then. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm bigging you up, but the problem I had, I missed a generation. So, and what I mean by that is I went from my early days of just hammering away on the phone, cold calling. Right. And I guess after a time in recruitment, what happens is you build up a network and you almost feel like you've earned the right not to have to pick up the phone.
Right.
Not to do much BD. I was a nightmare to manage when I worked for the global business, because they used to have these business development days.
Right.
Where it was a competition in the office, and I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it because I had plenty of clients and my time was better spent serving the clients that I had. And I didn't want to pointlessly phone them up just to get a visit or whatever.
Right.
So
right.
I used to say, look, I'd rather not do it. So I know I was a nightmare to manage. So it's probably best that I manage myself now. But I then skipped. So what then happened between me not having to do anything really in terms of business development, which would have been around about 2007, my latter years with the global firm, and even with the search firm, I didn't have to do much in the way of business development. When I set up Willow Resourcing, again, all off existing contacts, existing networks, no business development. And then, for various reasons, the we fell on hard times. As I said, too many eggs in too few baskets, big clients, big multinationals who suddenly shut up shop.
Right.
And I had to go and win business. And things had changed. I didn't know about digital marketing. And so I went back to just picking up the phone, and it does work. But for me, it was soul destroying for me.
Right.
Because nobody knew me outside of my client base, my existing client base. And it was very, very, I knew I was good at what I did. And I was told that regularly at supplier reviews, etc. But I couldn't get anyone else to listen.
Right.
And what had happened is everything had moved online, or to a large degree.
Right.
Marketing had moved online, sales had moved, and I'd missed that. I'd missed it completely. I was a LinkedIn, I like to say I was a LinkedIn voyeur. I watched LinkedIn. I used to log it, but never contributed. And I sometimes sit back, well, I know, we'll talk more, I know about where we are now. But if I'd known that when I set up the business, and could have had those processes churning away in the background, if I could have been less of a voyeur and more of a participator on LinkedIn,
right,
then I think, first of all, we would have quickly diversified the client base. And I don't think we would have had the real lows that we had around it would have been about 2018, 2019, the sort of post-Brexit vote here. And that was all pre-pandemic. The business was already struggling, I'll be honest and say, and it reached a head in 2019 where I really didn't know what I wanted to do, whether I actually wanted to continue doing this.
Right.
And then the pandemic hit.
Yeah. Yep. That's where the fun really began. So I think you've kind of teed up the transition that we want to make here in this show of, talking a little bit about our work together. So you just kind of shared the situation prior to us working together. We just started working together right in the middle of the pandemic, right at the beginning of the pandemic. You and I started working together. What do you think was the kind of the biggest challenge that you've overcame while working together?
I guess the showing up bit. As I say, I used to log in to LinkedIn literally as a matter of process every day, but I didn't really do much with it. I had the recruit license and still have, and obviously used it to search as a search tool, which a lot of recruiters do. But that was it. As in the main body of LinkedIn, I did nothing. And it was having that confidence to go from doing nothing to actually showing up, not just once a week, but you got me showing up 5 days a week, and producing my own content. That takes a lot of confidence, I think, that you actually believe that people want to read what you write about, not just sharing somebody else's article or whatever it might be, actually publishing my own content. So that was the hardest thing.
What do you think, and just to follow up on that, because I know this is a big challenge for a lot of people, is becoming the actual participator. And I think you hit the nail on the head, and especially with my time working with people, I know this, kind of factually, is that usually the biggest fear is putting myself out there. Who wants to listen to me anyways? I mean, what did we do in the program, or what did you do personally that helped you kind of go like, all right, enough's enough, I'm going all in on this?
You kicking my butt quite a bit. I think it was you. You gave me first of all the confidence to believe that actually people wanted to hear what I had to say. Right. So you showed me how to grow my audience, first of all, which ultimately the LinkedIn as a tool, the power of it is directly proportional to your to your audience, size of your audience, and that is your network on LinkedIn. So you've got to grow your connections, and you showed me how to do that in a consistent manner, and then how to communicate with that audience, and that's key. I think it's that I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to grow the audience, and I didn't know how to communicate with the audience, and that was something that quite quickly the Relevant Recruiter program showed me to do, both of those facets, really.
Right.
So yeah, that's I mean, that's very briefly what it did. It's done so much more. Obviously, as you know, I've got so many different channels now that I use. But it was that ability. You could take away a lot of the other channels, and just, even if it was just LinkedIn, that alone has made a massive. I cannot tell you how much of a difference it's made to the business. Phenomenal.
Right. It just kind of following up on that. You mentioned earlier that one of the things that you pride yourself on, one of the things you think that is unique about yourself, is you have a consultative approach. You kind of become an advisor to these recruiting companies. You've always been a sponge. You've loved to educate people and add value. Share with how you've been able to kind of take what you've been doing on the phone and then turning that into content, and how that's impacted your business. And just a quick note for everybody that's watching or listening to this here. Mark has the record of all my clients on the most views on a post, which I think is close to 6 million views, right, Mark?
But yeah, 6 million views, 100 and something thousand comments, and sorry, 137,000 likes, and I've forgotten how many thousand comments, etc. To be honest, the sort of two go hand in hand. One of the hardest things when it comes to putting your own content out there is to source that content, to constantly think of new content, and it sort of came to me. I'd speak to candidates. Last year, obviously, there was a lot of conversation with candidates because of the pandemic and everything that followed. And I was getting asked a lot of questions by candidates about their own experiences, what they should do. They were asking for advice. And obviously, there's only so many people you can speak to. So it was logical then to say, okay, this information that I'm sharing with a relatively small number of individuals over the phone, because obviously there's only so many you can speak to.
Right.
There's got to be loads of others in this same boat who would love to know the answers to these questions. So that became a source of content. I'd just basically, I'd follow up the next day by talking about a conversation that I'd had generally with candidates. This year, it's become more with clients, because clients are telling me the whole market dynamic has changed, as you're probably aware. And so clients are now telling me about their problems and their experiences as how tough it has been to recruit people. But obviously last year it was all about getting noticed as a candidate. And so that's what I started to do, was just use some of those conversations as a basis for content. And some of it was advisory, and some of it was more, I'm a very values driven individual. Right. And some of it, the one you mentioned, was sharing a very poor experience that a candidate had in the marketplace with one of my clients. I'll be honest to say, a client I didn't know previously, and a client I ceased to work with immediate effect. And the way she was treated was appallingly. And I just put it out there saying, look, just because the market conditions are heavily in your favor as a client, this doesn't give you the right to treat candidates in this manner. And the result, I had to turn all notifications off because
had to hire somebody just to manage that post.
it was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. But it created a lot of work, as you say. But it also led directly, I think, to around well over 1,000 new connections. It may have been nearly 2,000 new connections as a result of that single post.
Right.
And that's just risk and compliance connections. So not just anybody. It was just
targeted connections.
Yeah. Yep. With people reaching out to me saying that really struck a chord with me.
Yep. Sure. How? Because I know there's, for you now, like the light bulb's on. You see it. You're seeing big results from it.
Yeah.
Share with the audience, like, because okay, congrats, Mark. You got a post. You got 6 million views. You got a couple thousand connections. But what are the actual tangible results in terms of revenue and some of the examples of people reaching out? Share some of those experiences you've had of kind of the inbound leads and then what's come through the door as a result of your content efforts.
Okay. So with this higher level, what it's allowed me to do completely is transform our business model. So we've moved away from working with a small number of large multinationals, which was where we had the issues previously, to now having, I actually had looked this up beforehand. This year alone, I have onboarded 32 new clients without making a single outbound call. Those clients have all come from, the vast majority have come from LinkedIn. Some have come from other marketing campaign, other channels that the Relevant Recruiter program has shown me. The vast majority via LinkedIn. Most of the work has been contingent, but those 32 new clients, I've placed with 22 of them. I've multiply placed with, I think it's 8 of them. Of the other 10, I have got outstanding opportunities with, I think, 5 or 6 of them. There's only literally a handful of those new clients that I haven't successfully placed with this year. So that is, that's just ridiculous. That is, to say to somebody that the reason why I contacted you originally was because I saw something on LinkedIn which said, never have to pick up the phone again. Yeah. And I thought, you wish, but look, I'll be honest, I'm getting desperate. Yeah. Look, I've got to give it a go. The market was quiet. I may as well learn a new skill.
Right.
And that's why I reached out to you. I honestly didn't believe that it would work out just as it is. I have typically, at the moment, I am probably getting, on average, 3 or 4 new instructions a week, without picking up the phone.
It's a beautiful thing.
I've actually turned down business because I'm too busy or it sits on the fringes of what I do. It's allowed me to become even more specialist in what I do, because I can walk away from work.
Right.
So, say on average per month, probably a dozen new instructions. Not only that, but we've gone from, I've seen the level at which I operate go north by a considerable margin. Our average placement fee has increased by nearly 50%.
Wow.
That's bonkers.
Yep. By
August this year, we'd smashed all records for the business since it was set up in 2012. And yeah, it just goes on. So It goes on. It's just, yeah, I can't thank you enough. It's just, and as you can probably tell, I've got my passion back for recruitment. By this sort of time, 2019, 2 years ago, I'd properly lost my mojo and was close to calling it a day. I don't know what I would have done, but I was close to calling it a day.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, Mark. And I appreciate that. And, like I've said multiple times before, I mean, you've followed the path and you've done the work and you've, you're a creator, you've stepped into all of this. So kudos to you for implementing and doing the work and seeing those results. And I know it wasn't always easy through the whole time. And I know there's been some goods and bads with it all, but Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, to hear the success you've had going through the program and how it's still working and how you're really just kind of still scratching the surface, how there's still so much more of a snowball effect that's going behind. If you wouldn't mind sharing, I mean, what do you think is different about, either the program or working with me specifically?
So I do the several elements that I enjoy are really, firstly, I know you've been there and done it. That really helps. Yeah, albeit slightly different sphere, but you understand this completely, which is great. And it's what you do is specifically tailored to recruiters, so that's spot on. It also helps to have a peer group and to have the weekly meetings, which, to be fair, I do know you go out of your way because of the time difference to accommodate me from time to time, which is fantastic. And to bounce ideas off peers is also really, really useful. They'll share their wins, they'll share what's worked for them. And I really enjoy that as well. So it's not just the one-on-one, which there's plenty of with you.
Yep.
But there is there is that group, there's that class. Yeah, you've got other people going through the same challenges as you. And I think what I do like about it as well is the way you structure that. It's not a class that all starts together on day one. So in that class, you've got people who are a bit further along in the program than you are. And although to begin with, you can be thinking, okay, I don't understand that. But they've also been where you are now.
Yep.
And had the same problems as you, and they've overcome them. So actually, it's like being at school, but in a class with people who are older than you, who've been through the growing pains
right
at that stage that you have. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. I think it's always good to know there are other people in the same boat as you.
Yep.
And the other thing, obviously, is it's that sort of complete access to the program whenever you want. So I can still go on there now if I've forgotten something and just want a refresher. Right. I can log into the program now and go back to something right back into the relevant recruiter, let alone the mastermind, and go, oh yeah, that was what it was. Yeah. Right. And I've got that continual access to it whenever I want. And I can also ping you a message and get you out of bed early.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. And it's, I'm always trying to find ways to enhance the community because so many people, give that feedback. And for me as a business owner, like that was just something that kind of happened by accident. It was like the more feedback, everyone's going like, hey, the community is great. It's like, all right, cool. Let's find ways to create more interaction with the community. And obviously we have our messaging, strings and, the inner circle on Facebook to try to continue to enhance that because I think it's what's great about being an entrepreneur is being surrounded by like-minded individuals. Like you said, people that have overcome challenges, but also people that are pursuing goals, or similar type goals. Then you're aligned with those types of people. And I think, what is that? You're the sum of the 5 people you're surrounded or spend most time with or something like that, and I think that's kind of the idea with that group there. So I love that feedback.
Yeah, it was, I remember, and someone you'll know well, Jessica.
Yep.
Yeah, so she was far more advanced through the course when I joined.
Yeah.
But it was already paying off for her, and it was paying off in a pandemic.
Right.
And so she was able to share those wins, and it's okay. So there's living proof that if I do what Donnie tells me to do, basically, and what he teaches me to do, just as Jessica has done, then there's no reason why I can't have the success that she's seeing now a bit further down the line. So yeah, that was really, really helpful.
Awesome. Love that feedback. Were there any surprises that kind of came up in the program? Anything that you were like, oh, I didn't know that was going to be there, or anything in general, or?
Not so much. I'm trying to think if there's any. There's a lot of times I was forced out of my comfort zone, as you know.
Yeah.
So, as we say here in the UK, I've got a face for radio. So doing videos Doing videos, it was just a horrible thought. It really was. How long was it taking you to persuade me to do this? Yeah.
But for those of you that are listening live, can you go give Mark some love and tell him how handsome he is, for crying out loud, please?
So I don't do as many videos now as I perhaps should do. But I go back to text posts. But yeah, that sort of, you've got to do a video, Mark. And I'm like, no, sure, are you sure? And actually persuade me to do so. That was difficult again, but it's all part of that, getting yourself out there.
Right.
And I actually do, as you know, I use a video now as part of my sort of meeting people on LinkedIn. Once I've connected with them, I do send them a little introductory video so they can put a face to a name and a voice to a name. And that goes down really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never have believed I would have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've overcome a lot. There's a lot of hurdles. Now that you're probably sitting there realizing it, like, holy crap, where have I come in a year?
Yeah, it was. But still to this day, I get loads of positive feedback on those videos. Whenever I send that message to somebody saying, "Hey, thanks for connecting with me. Look, here's just, if you've got time, just watch this. And it'll tell you a bit more about me, what I do, my values, and I hope you find it interesting and useful." I get so much positive feedback on it, which isn't bad for me. My Brummie accent, yeah.
Paul just gave you some great feedback. He said, "Mark, you have great charisma, very believable and compelling." So,
thank you for that.
He said nothing about you starting to do more videos, though. He didn't say you should stick to radio either. So I think that's all positive.
Podcast rather than webcast, basically.
Yeah. Mark, thanks for sharing everything. I mean, what would you say to someone that is considering going through the program?
Just do it. Seriously, just do it. I've told you what a difference it's made.
Yep.
Whether you've got two things: do it, but don't just dip your toe in. Absolutely throw yourself in.
Yep.
Do everything, and above all, show up. That was what you kept saying to me. Show up, and the success is again directly proportional to how much you show up. If you only show up on LinkedIn once a week, then you're not going to get anywhere near as much out of it, I don't believe, as I have. Right. If you are regimented in setting a little bit of time each day, which I do, as you know, and to put a post out there most days. I now probably, if I want to, I put original content there about 3 days, but I post all my jobs on there in terms of an actual post rather than just advertising them, and just show up day after day after day after day. You will absolutely transform your business.
Yep. Well, you've definitely done that. There's no doubt about that. And again, thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for sharing your experience going through the program. It's been a pleasure, working with you. We've developed a great relationship over the last year. Excited to see what's to come from that. And curious, what are you most excited about now with where your business is at? What's exciting to you?
Exciting is now we've built the business back up financially, in particular, which, as anybody else that knows, you have all these ideas as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, but you can only do them if you've got the funds to do it. And I'll be honest and say we didn't have that in place, but now we do. So this is by no means the end of my digital marketing journey. As you know, I'm keen to explore other channels, to keep up that and learn more. And that's what excites me, that I can learn more. It goes back to me being a sponge. I am still learning more. I can learn more. I can afford then to put my ideas into practice, which will hopefully then have, again, a knockback effect on the business, in terms of us being able to grow further. and retire earlier, if I'm honest.
Get out there and do some more golfing and fishing, baby.
Exactly.
Yep. Awesome. Mark, what's one last piece of advice? A lot of people would love to have the success that you're having in your business right now. What's one last piece of advice you can leave the audience with today?
Be original. Be yourself. I think what you kept authentic is the word.
Yep.
And I think that's why a lot of the posts I put out on LinkedIn get so much traction. Not just in terms of likes and so. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about the number of people who reach out to me as a candidate or as a client and say, I've been following your posts for weeks or months, who've never commented,
right,
never liked or anything like that, but they are seeing them.
Yep.
And you want people to buy into you, and you can only do that if you're yourself and you're authentic. And that's what I would say to people.
I think that's beautiful. We'll go ahead and end it on that. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Mark Wilson. He is the risk and compliance recruiter. Go ahead and check him out on LinkedIn. He is a wonderful guy to follow. Mark, again, thank you for being here with me again today. For those of you that are interested about the Relevant Recruiter program, just go ahead and reach out to me. Send me an email at donnie@donniegupton.com or leave a comment if you're listening to this live in the Facebook group, and I will reach out. We can talk about how we can get some similar success that Mark has had. Mark, thank you so much again for being here today with me.
Thank you, Donnie, and thank you for all your help. Cheers.
You got it, my friend. You got it.